In the several hours I spent playing Jets and Guns, I threw it aside more than once, vowing never to pick it up again. I lost count of how many stages I did make it through, somewhere between 20 and 30 I'd guess, but in the end I finally did give up, and I'm sorry I can't give you an analysis based on a full playthrough, but I just cannot keep going with this game. It's not so much that this is a terrible game. It has a huge amount of content, an extensive system of customization, and plenty of humour in both its visuals and story elements, and in no way is it broken or unplayable. It is, however, a terrible shmup, and in all honesty I'd be far more likely to recommend this to a non-shmup fan than the people I imagine usually watch this channel. One of the main reasons I say that is that dodging, in the traditional sense, is not really a part of this game. Both shots and enemies come in such a chaotic whirl that patterns, if there even are any, are indiscernible. Add to that tiny thin shots that blend in with the backgrounds. In fact, in many stages it seems the shots have been deliberately chosen to match the colour scheme of the backgrounds, and the half-dozen lasers and missiles you can have emanating from your own ship at any one time, and the debris, mostly harmless, although it's always hard to tell, from explosions and destructible scenery, and you have a recipe for total confusion that leads to survival being equal parts luck to skill. A lot of the time, the only way I knew I was being hit was because my controller would start shaking, at which point I would notice a hail of tiny projectiles coming in from some off-screen enemy that had now destroyed my entire run. On other occasions, I actually had to capture some video, then look back at it more than once to see why I'd died. Enemies do vastly different amounts of damage too, and it's easy to be cruising along thinking you're doing fine, then suddenly find yourself being crushed by something zipping in unsignalled, catching you on its front and dropping your health from 80 to 20 in under a second. This constant frustration is only added to by bizarre interludes in which you have your weapons removed and have to race through gates, or a horrible, horrible escort mission in which what you're escorting is basically one entire side of the screen. It was on one of these that I did finally toss the game aside and refuse to pick it up again. During the stage, you're tasked with picking up pieces of DNA. Where they come from I don't really know, but not only is the level unusually difficult, but at about 70% stage completion, with about 70% DNA collected, I suddenly got a mission failed message. Despite repeat attempts, I could find no rhyme nor reason to how well I was doing, and in many ways that may have been the perfect place to drop the game, as that completely encapsulates my feelings through the majority of my playtime. I just did not feel like what I did was either rewarded or punished, with any progress coming more through persistence and luck than any skill or improvement. Now weirdly, when these things aren't driving you up the wall, the game can actually be quite easy, with your superpowered ship blasting away in all directions and taking out everything that's thrown your way, which I will admit does offer a certain cheap thrill, but also leaves the whole experience wildly unbalanced, with the overriding feeling being that you're just drifting through stages with enemies dropping in random combinations that may or may not be either borderline impossible or able to be dispatched with your eyes closed. It all contributes to a total absence of flow as you lurch from one encounter to the next. Visuals contribute to this feeling, although there's less to complain about in that department. Stages are mostly highly distinct and have little cartoon panels or descriptions explaining what's going on, which at least explains why you're in space one minute, some sort of factory facility after that, and then flying through a city after that. All in all though, it's hard to think of any one way to describe the game's style, leading to a certain absence of character despite all the humour and unique mission setups. Presentation outside of the game stages though is another major weak point, with unintuitive menus and equipment selections. You can kinda sum this aspect up by simply starting the game. After pushing plus to start, a menu comes up which you have to navigate to with a cursor to begin playing. In other words, there has been no attempt to optimize things for this Switch release, which is a real disappointment and immediately gives the title an unpolished feeling. When it comes to customizing your ship, things get even more awkward and confusing. There are multiple slots to put weapons in, as well as gadgets that unlock things. Sorry, not entirely sure what. Not really sure either which weapons are better or worse than others, despite extensive experimentation, and unlike other games with similar systems where upgrading is an achievement and something to look forward to, I always dreaded being taken back here to be faced with a confusing array of choices I wasn't sure weren't making my ship worse. On the plus side, there are tons of weapons to play with, tons of stages to get through, and as mentioned, there is a certain thrill to be had when everything's going well, but those moments are just too few and far between to cover the game's faults as a shmup. Overall, I can't honestly give this game more than a 5 out of 10, although as mentioned, if you do not particularly like shmups, you may well have more fun with it. I know that it's got good reviews on Steam and seems to have a lot of fans. It's a shame to start the year with what is, I'm afraid, my first Hatchet job, and if I hadn't received a copy of this game for free, I probably would have put this down much earlier and not bothered to review it. Not that Fully Esperade is going to be up next, and it's hard to imagine that being anything less than wonderful, so I'll hopefully see you for a more positive experience with that one. As ever, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.